One of the main plot points of Arknights is a disease called Oripathy. It is absolutely incurable and it causes its infected nothing but suffering. There are three main ways of getting infected. Inhaling active Originium particles, active Originium entering your bloodstream, for example through an open wound, and antepartum transmission, which is the medical term for if you are infected and make children, those will be infected as well. We mentioned Originium pollution in the last video, didn't we? The more you have to do with Originium, the higher is your risk of getting infected. People with long-term exposure to Originium and or products using processed Originium are at the risk of contracting Oripathy. The level of risk obviously varies a lot. People with an Originium-powered kettle are not at the risk as high as Originium miners, for example, who actually are at a particularly high risk of getting infected because of all of the dust floating around. If you get some Originium dust into an open wound, you will always 100% get an infection. A big thing to note here, there is absolutely no relation between your physique, your physical strength, and how susceptible you are to Oripathy. Whether you are a big bodybuilder or a lanky nerd, once Originium finds its way into your body, you are done for. Interestingly enough though, you are not gonna get Oripathy by just spending time with an infected. The disease does not jump from person to person like that. You can only really get it through the ways we mentioned earlier. All of that sounds pretty odd, right? And not like a normal illness? Well, the game openly states that Oripathy does not work by the logic of regular diseases. After all, it's not a virus or bacteria or something, but a mineral with mutative effects taking a hold of your body. This is what Oripathy is at the end of the day: crystallization. The best way of telling whether a person is infected with Oripathy or not would be real-time blood crystal density measurement. You know that one part in an operator's files that you always skip while reading? Yeah, that. That way an infection can be recognized very early. Preferably this should happen at a medical facility, but there are also test kits with quick test strips. So, does the average infected person have access to any of this? Obviously not. Many infected will only realize that they have been infected once a certain symptom becomes visible. We mentioned the word crystallization earlier. In case you are confused by that term, this right there, that term is what Oripathy is at the end of the day. One other way of putting it is, as long as you have Oripathy, Originium will inevitably eat away at your body. At some point after getting infected, you are going to notice a dark powdery substance on your skin. This substance is Originium crystals, which are surfacing through your skin from the inside to the outside. It means that the cells of your body have started to fuse with Originium. Remember from the last video, Originium has mutative effects on the cells of living beings. In the middle and late stages of Oripathy, your body is going to become filled with crystals. They can very easily damage or rupture your organs, causing damage to you from the inside. If you are very unlucky and you get crystallizations within your brain, fluctuations in your condition will have serious impacts on your nervous system, and it can cause things like trigger epileptic attacks. It can also cause you to lose your consciousness and send you into a deep sleep. When that happens and you don't get any proper treatment in time, you will experience a brain death very soon. While that does not happen to everybody, the majority of infected will get crystallizations on their skin. The powdery substance from earlier are just a bunch of little crystals which will cluster into bigger crystallizations down the line. And as you can probably imagine, crystals piercing through your skin will cause an insane amount of pain to the infected. The pain gets described to be sharp and prickling in nature. And it has an insane impact on an infected's day-to-day life. The only thing they really can do is take loads of painkillers, as that very often is the only help available. Once the infection progresses to a certain point, things will get very bad. Late-stage Oripathy patients need actual medical facilities just to survive. The more your Oripathy progresses, the lower the odds of successful treatment become. At some point, once you get to very late stage Oripathy, medical professionals will make the decision that further treatment is inappropriate. There really only exists one single therapy method for late stage Oripathy, the so-called chimeric treatment. But we will go into details on that at a way later point. But all of this is only if you get regular Oripathy. If you are very unlucky, you are going to get acute Oripathy. It's its own type of Oripathy, and the differences between the acute and the chronic type are described to be complicated. It's very dangerous though and can get life-threatening very quickly. You need immediate emergency treatment. You are going to get acute Oripathy if the source of your infection, for example some Originium dust that entered your body, rapidly starts to circulate through your body's blood system. It is very bad. Symptoms of acute Oripathy include very strong fevers, strong enough to make you pass out. It can make you vomit up blood in which you can drown, also straight up thrombosis, and with that difficulty with breathing and coughing up blood, up to actual suffocation. Usually people with acute Oripathy won't have any visible crystals on their skin because the infection spreads way too fast for the crystals to actually grow. So does acute Oripathy progress into regular Oripathy after some time? To be honest, the symptoms are more than likely going to kill you before it gets to that. If not suppressed via drugs very quickly, infection symptoms will intensify in a very short amount of time. But it almost works the other way around. So-called acute attacks. So attacks with the symptoms of acute Oripathy are very typical for mid to late stage Oripathy. Furthermore, in cases of acute Oripathy, the infected can have occasional outbursts of Originium dust when coughing, which actually has the potential to cause further infections if people inhale the dust coming out of them. That makes acute Oripathy pretty dangerous to non-infected in contrast to regular Oripathy. Regular Oripathy is only really dangerous to non-infected in one specific situation: death. Oripathy is terminal. You are going to die due to high Originium cell assimilation, either because the crystals forming inside of you are gonna cause a lot of damage to your body, or because your body is just not gonna be able to function properly with that many crystals inside of it. At some point after an infected passes away, the crystals on their skin will start to glow. That indicates that they will soon enter the last stage of Oripathy, disintegration. The infected's body will slowly turn into glowing Originium dust until the only thing that's left of them is a bit of glowing Originium dust which floats around for a while before it then settles down. The time frame between an infected dying and then disintegrating depends on the rate of Originium cell assimilation in their body. This disintegration is insanely bad as it creates a massive risk of secondary spread, which can be very dangerous if not handled appropriately. All the Originium dust that they turn into is a new source of infection after all. Breathe it in and you are more than likely going to suffer the same fate. It has to be made sure that the Originium dust is contained so that it won't infect further people. So what do you do when you contract Oripathy? Well, healing it is not possible. No cure for it exists. There are some people who are trying to find one, but there haven't been any big breakthroughs so far. If you have Oripathy, you are going to live a painful life until you suffer a horrible death and potentially bring doom onto even more people. Your only chance at lessening your pain and potentially extending your lifespan for a bit is getting proper Oripathy treatment. It is in fact possible to suppress the symptoms of Oripathy with so-called Oripathy suppressants, medicine which will suppress your Oripathy. But those are absolutely not widely available to the average infected, not in the slightest in fact. The only things that most infected have are painkillers, if anything. There are also some other things to be noted here. Oripathy patients are advised not to drink any alcohol, for example, and drinking a lot of caffeine may also aggravate Oripathy, but the game also tells us that it's impossible to know how much different factors actually affect the progression of Oripathy. Oripathy might be a terminal disease that absolutely everybody can catch because Originium is everywhere, a problem that all of humanity faces, but it's not enough to bring humanity together. Most people are absolutely terrified of Oripathy and by extension also of the infected. The vast majority of people treat them very harshly, to say the least. You will find animosity against the infected pretty much everywhere you go. We will go into genuinely disgusting, like actually disgusting details on how individual countries treat the infected once we talk about individual countries, but it's usually something along the lines of the infected get separated from healthy people so that the disease won't spread, which makes absolutely no sense because remember, being next to an infected does not lead to oripathy transmission. It is just that the majority of people believe the exact opposite. And it is not just the fault of governments making laws and stuff. Historians have confirmed that the suffering of the infected predates written law. People literally just hate them, even people who you think would know better. There are researchers out there who are fully aware of how oripathy is being transmitted, but they still continue to hate them and contribute to fear-mongering. And some people even continue to hate the infected after they get infected themselves. Many people will just not accept their new identity as an infected. After contracting, an infected will usually go through a phase of having to mentally adjust first and accept who they now are, but some people will never make it through that phase. There are many infected out there who lose their will to live after becoming infected. It can unironically be said that the infected are the by far most hated people on the planet. One of the big reasons for people being so scared of them definitely is the fact that oripathy also grants you certain powers. Next episode, Originium arts. Click on the left for a quick summary of Arknights Lore, click on the right for every single Arknights Lore video, or click on the middle for the second channel, which has way more Arknights content. Big shout out to Carousel, Ava, Chris, Darth Elder, Demoboy125, Elite117, Evin, Heckler, Jimshot First, Kivinato, Longo, Neo, Salvesa, and the Phoenix. Cheers!